Hot take. Christmas music starting on November 1st is completely acceptable. If you're a pitcher or a pitching coach, maybe even a parent, wondering how to build up safely, today's episode is for you. Today, I want to talk about acute to chronic workload ratios, what they mean. I want to walk you through an example and teach you how to safely build up yourself as an athlete, or your pitchers if you're a coach, or if you're a parent and you just really like this stuff. Today's for you. Usually I talk about bigger picture principles, but today I do want to get super specific with some of the data. So if that's right up your alley, then stick around. By the way, this can also be used for hitters to track your workloads. That's not quite as specific, but you can track your workloads using these same concepts. Welcome back. I'm Dr. Edwin Porras. I am a physical therapist in the Denver metro area. I'm the owner of Pro Athlete Physical Therapy, and I am the only physical therapist in the Denver metro area with pro baseball experience and who also owns 2 rabbits, at least to my knowledge. You may need to look at this one again. I'll have some graphics that are going to pull up. If you are just listening to this on the podcast, go to the YouTube channel, Pro Athlete Physical Therapy, and there will be some pictures. But if you need a reference, make sure to bookmark it, send it to yourself. If you need to look back at it come spring ball time. To be clear, this can work for healthy athletes, for healthy pitchers, and it can work if you're coming off an injury. I want to keep it as light as possible, but if at any point you have questions, drop them down in the comments. I'll try to answer those. These are the same concepts that we use at Pro Athlete PT to build our pitchers back up. These are the same concepts we use for big leaguers. These are the same concepts we use for every pitcher that comes through our door. We don't hand you a generic handout. This is how we do things. Most of the concepts that I'm going to talk about, they come from a paper that was published from Dr. Mike Reinold. He's a physical therapist, a baseball PT. Him and his research team, they published this a little over a year ago at this point. The goal was to give pitchers a realistic strategy to stay in a safe zone. And we'll get into what that safe zone is. So why does that ratio matter? Let's start by just defining terms, and then I think that'll help with why these ratios matter. For our purposes, acute just means right away or immediate. Chronic just means over a long period of time. For our purposes, it's about a month. So chronic means over time. Acute just means in the immediate or the short term. So acute to chronic workload ratio is just a fancy way to calculate how much stress does your body go through right away, how much stress does your body go through over time. That's all it is. The real reason that this matters is because we know that the acute to chronic workload ratio in sports is a massive movement right now. And you hear workload management, it's misunderstood because the recent research shows if that ratio stays between 0.8 and 1.3, then you're in the safe zone. If your workload dips below 0.8, or if it goes above 1.3 sharply, you're at a significantly increased risk of injury. Some papers have said up to 7 times more likely. That's why 0.8 to 1.3 is considered the safe zone. If you don't do enough, or you do way more than your body is used to, you're more likely to get hurt. Let me give you an example. Let's say you're built up to closing for a max of 2 innings. You've been doing it for months. You're throwing cheese. It's looking good. It's not a big deal. But then coach comes to you and coach wants you to start 2 days after you close. Here's the problem. Your chronic workload at its base is totally fine, but it isn't ready for almost double or more than double the amount of throws, especially when you just came off closing 2 innings. So it's going to take a big spike. Could you get through it? Yes. But are you much more likely to get injured? Also yes. But it works in reverse too. Take the same example and you flip it. Let's say you do start all season long, all spring, you're throwing well, you're feeling good, no injuries, 60 to 70 pitches per start. The season ends and you don't throw for 2 months. Then you slowly start to build yourself back up. You play catch, you finally got back to the mound, you threw a light pen, but you're nowhere near built up to where you were for the spring. Coach comes back up and asks you again, do you think you can close this weekend? You've done that before, right? 2 innings, no big deal, 25, 30 pitches. Here's the problem with that scenario. Your baseline or your chronic workload's not built up at all. So you don't even have a baseline to operate off of. So if you go out and throw 2 innings after you just threw your first light pin, you could run into issues. That's what we talk about when we talk about the safe zones. You want to be able to do enough to keep your workloads consistent, but not too much to where you're spiking them above what your body's ready for. That's why we stay in that 0.8 to 1.3 safe zone. I hope you're still with me. The whole point of that is to say, don't do too much, but don't do too little. You want to hit just the right amount. And if you haven't heard we call it the Goldilocks zone. So the Goldilocks and the 3 bears, if you haven't heard, I'm going to go through it really briefly. There's a family of bears, mama bear, papa bear, baby bear, and they live in a house. I don't know why these bears own house. Real estate is outrageous. Good for them. They leave their house after they'd made some breakfast, and there's this little girl. Her name's Goldilocks. For some reason, she wanders into the woods. She runs into this house. I don't know who's not watching this child. Please watch your children. Don't let them go into empty houses. Please watch after them. Make sure they're not breaking and entering. You are liable for your child and their crimes. So anyway, Goldilocks breaks and enters into these bears' home. Who knows why? So she sees that there's some porridge. Porridge is just like oatmeal. And she goes to the first one. She hits Papa Bear's porridge and she goes, oh, this is way too hot. Mama Bear's is way too cold. And Baby Bear's bowl is just right. So then she goes and she finds some rocking chairs. Papa Bear's is way too hard. Mama Bear's, it's not comfortable. Oh, but Baby Bear's chair's just right. And then she does the same thing for the beds. Papa Bear's is too hard. Mama Bear's is too soft. Baby Bear's is just right. And then the bears come home from whatever errand they were running and she screams and runs out the house. Okay. The moral of the story, we want to stay in the Goldilocks zone. 0.8 to 1.3 as athletes. It's not too much. It's not too little. It is just right. How did Reinhold and his team do this in the paper that they published? Let me walk you through it. The biggest mistake I see young pitchers make is they don't track their throws. They have no idea how many they're throwing when they play catch. They have no idea how many they're throwing in the pen. They don't know how many warm-ups they did once they got out there. And the only reason they know how many throws that they threw in game is because somebody else tracked it. They have no clue. That's the biggest pet peeve, but I think that's the first place to start. Honestly, if you're listening to this and you're like, I've never thought about tracking my throws, you could end this episode right now and you would be in much better shape just tracking it and just knowing. But we'll keep going. I want to tell you, every throw has a measurable load, right? The biggest mistake pitchers make in general is they don't track it, but I understand that you might not know how to track it. So this is how you track your throws. It's honestly super simple. Your throwing workload is going to be distance times intensity times volume. Distance just means how far are you throwing. Intensity is what effort you're putting in, right? So is it 70% effort, 80% effort, what percent intensity? And then volume. How many throws did you throw? Every distance has an estimated effort that I'm going to put up here. And that final number, when you multiply those three variables, that's going to be your workload. Let's just call it your acute workload for now. Remember, acute just means right away. What's your workload? Right away. So that's going to help us estimate your chronic workload. Okay. Here's an example. Let's say you play catch with a teammate and you're going to do that 4 times this week. You start at 60 feet. It takes you 10 throws to get back to 90 feet. And during those first 10 throws, when you're at 60 feet, you're throwing at like 70% effort. If you multiply, we're going to say 70% effort is 0.7. So 60 times 10 times is 0.7. That's about 420 units of work. Here on this podcast, don't worry about units. Your teacher's going to tell you to worry about units. Right now, if we don't care about units, it's just 420. Now, once you get to 90 feet, you throw another 20 throws and you're throwing at about 80% intensity. So you're going to take 90 times 20 times 0.8. That's going to give you 1,440 units of work. The last one, when you're working your way back in, again, we're going to estimate. It's not perfect. You're going to estimate 75 feet when you're working your way back in, about 5 throws, about 75% effort. You're going to multiply all those the same way you did for the other ones. 75 times 5 times 0.75, that's 281 units of work. Then you add them together, 420 plus 1,440 plus 281, that's equal to 2,141 units of work. When you went out to play catch with your friend, you threw for 2,141 units of work. That's your day's workload. Here's the last step. Let's multiply it for a week. Like we said, you threw 4 times this week. So you're going to take 2,141 and you're going to multiply that times 4. All right, that's 8,564 units. Your work for that week was 8,564. This is your acute or your immediate, remember your right away baseline after a week of throwing. Now, obviously it gets more complicated than that. You throw different distances, different situations, different drills, right? But for simplicity's sake, we're just going to isolate it and say, this is all the throwing you did. And we're going to say again, for simplicity's sake, that that's all you did. That same exact routine of throwing, you did that for 4 weeks, just for simplicity's sake. That means your chronic workload is 8,564, like we said. Now, this is where the magic happens. If you're still with me, which I hope you are, it gets simple from here. So let's find your acute to chronic workload target. Let's find your safe zone. This is really easy, I promise. So now that we know your chronic workload is 8,504, and remember we want to stay between that 0.8 and that 1.3 safe zone, we're going to find your lower safe zone and your upper safe zone. So the way that you do that is you take 8,500 64. Multiply that times 0.8. That is 6,851. So that's your lower safe zone. So at any given point over the next month, you don't want to do less than that. And how do you control that? Well, if you want to skip a day of throwing, make sure the next day that you throw a little bit extra so that you can hit around 6,000 units of work for the week total. Remember, this is total. You add up your daily and you get your total. So you want to throw for at least 6,851. Now, what's your upper limit? What's that 1.3 ratio? Where you're going to do the same thing. You take your chronic workload, 8,564. You multiply that times 1.3, or 11,133 units. The absolute workload increase that you want to go over the next month, you don't want to go over that 11,133. So does that mean you could take your chronic workload and over the week multiply that times 1.3 and then just blast through? Yes, but we don't necessarily recommend it because that does put you at risk as well. This was a lot of information. I understand. The point that I'm trying to make is we want to stay within that relative Goldilocks zone. The main takeaway is, number one, if you don't track your throws, start tracking your throws. Number two, when you do start tracking your throws, just multiply distance times effort times volume. Add those up for the week, multiply it for however many times that you're throwing that week. That is your workload. And then you just multiply that number times 0.8. Take the same number, multiply it by 1.3. That is your Goldilocks safe zone. Too often I see pitchers don't build themselves up safely. They'll go from throwing one pen to throwing 5 innings. You can survive that for a while, but eventually it does come back to bite you. Now, if you're listening to all this and you're like, yeah, that's a lot of math, I'll just go to you and you can track it for me. I totally understand. That's fine. Come find us at Pro Athlete PT. I hope this one was helpful. I'm not even going to get into more of the details, but this is a high level, hopefully, understanding of how to track your workloads as a pitcher. If you want to do it on your own, let me know if you have comments. Let me know if you have questions. Drop them down in the chat. And if you want to play Christmas music starting November 1st, that is totally acceptable.